Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. You are watching Insight. You know, it's time to talk finances. We've got Heather Foster here with Foster Financial. We're talking about legislative risk. Heather, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Always good to be here. Oh. But you know, this is a election year.
Yes.
So how can we go into election year without talking about legislative risk?
We have to.
So when we're talking about financial planning, it is always a risk, I tell people, that has to be thought about, but you can't exactly plan for it because under different presidents, right, under different parties, there's going to be different legislation that we're going to see get pushed through. So legislation risk can have a real impact on a financial portfolio. And I'm not just talking about the stock markets going up or down under a certain party. I'm talking about legislation changes that tell us things like we're going to change the federal estate tax, and if you make or if you have X amount, then we're going to tax your inheritors 50% of anything above this level. In my career, I've seen that level go from 500,000 to over 11 million per person, and it's varied greatly over the years. So that is something, when you see that over your career life of 20 years doing this business now, and when you see it varying that much, and then one party comes in and changes it and says we're going to cut that number in half, no, we're going to double that number, no, now we're going to cut that number. That's the legislation risk I'm talking about. Is you can lay out a financial plan and say that, well, because right now under current legislation you're nowhere near that federal estate tax, but if it changes, then you would be. Have we planned appropriately for those changes? They're changes, though, that you can't exactly foresee or foreshadow, but you can see some of the things coming. Like when they put in the Secure Act 1.0 and the Secure Act 2.0, there was something that they tried to put in, both of them, that they were looking at, about taking away the ability for people to do Roth conversions. And anyone who's listened to me on here, I preach Roth, because it grows tax-free, and it's a huge tax advantage to do that kind of strategic planning. But if they take that kind of planning away from us, what kind of planning can we do at that point then? Everyone who's already done the planning is going to be very happy that they did the planning, but if they take that away. So here's what I tell people. If you see something coming up, meaning you hear it, you're hearing it, it doesn't get passed, but you're hearing things coming up in these conversations, then it's probably something that will eventually get passed. So you need to look forward in those thought processes. Tax bracket changes. We're under a tax cut right now. Depending on, again, which person gets elected, taxes may go up, they may stay the same, they could go down, but you're looking at those parties and you're trying to say, okay, based on that political party's opinions and how they tend to do legislation and put laws in office, are we going to see any major changes? So one thing about legislation, we actually, on the stock market side, you kind of want to see the House and Senate be separated. You want to see one majority party in one and one majority party in the other, because if it was a majority party on both, you would see a lot of legislation get pushed through. The markets actually react negatively if we have a majority in House and Senate. So because there's going to be a lot of legislation changes, those unknown factors can actually have a negative effect on the stock market. So kind of that, we can't get anywhere because we've got opposing parties. That actually is better on the stock market long term because there's not going to be a lot of changes. But those changes, again, that can affect your retirement plan, you have to consider them. You have to listen and find out, okay, depending on who's in office, what types of policies are they going to be pushing? What types of sectors of the markets are going to do better under this political party or that political party? Because again, if you look at some of the initiatives that are out there, there are investments or stocks that are going to do better under one party versus the other. There are maneuvers that you might want to make from a tax perspective that you might want to make sooner rather than later, depending on which party ends up in office. So just be very mindful that when we lay out financial plans, we are looking at what current legislation is, and we can plan around that. But you definitely need to also be thinking or working with some people that say, hey, if this happens, what move are you going to make? Do you have someone that's proactive, that's going to immediately say, hey, because they're talking about this, it's more than likely going to be something we're going to keep seeing pushed into legislation until it eventually changes. We need to go ahead and focus on those kinds of things now.
Heather, I'm sure you've sparked a lot of minds in thinking, hey, as I'm watching this election cycle, there are a lot of different things that I need to be paying attention to, and even asking yourself, hey, do I know what I'm doing if this happens? Or maybe I need to reach out and say, hey, I think it's time I get a financial advisor to be able to help me out to know if this happens, what should I do next?
I think we got a lot of job security in our industry when they made everything to do with finances so complicated,
Yeah.
and retirement planning and tax planning. So, most people go, I want that professional in my corner. It's just sometimes people don't know which professional that really is. Is it the attorney?
Wow.
Is it the financial professional? Is it my insurance guy that sells me insurance? Which person is actually going to be responsible to help me and understand and get ahead of these legislation changes? So we tell you to work with a holistic financial advisor for that very reason.
And that's why it's important to go ahead and give Foster Financial a call so you can be able to get all those questions answered, right?
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Everyone, you heard this great information, and we have all of those segments on our website, 21alivenews.com. Go to that Insight tab under Your Money. But right now, go ahead and go to Foster Financial's website to be able to say, hey, I want to go ahead and book that consultation. We'll be right back.